Well, everyone, this is Adam from Unthink Me. Everything might be completely broken and ruined, and you might hear nothing out of my face. That would be fairly typical for our jam. I'm here to answer all the comments that I've received on my videos that I've made in recent times, and I'm here to talk about little theory, and I'm here to be a vampire and talk about whatever the heck I want to talk about with you all. I'm not really going crazy about getting people into the chat because I'm still working out a lot of AV issues, also internet speed issues. Anyways, let's jump right into the jams. So I'm over here in my comments. Started posting some shorts in preparation for posting stuff to TikTok, so I'm going to get comments on shorts. The policy is currently that I'm going to thumb you up if I answer on stream. There's probably some simple way to provide a link. Share video link, and then will it allow me to just respond with the link to the live thing? Well, we can try. I'm just gonna thumb that one up because I get it. Going down, Jimmy6990 about my fake corporate meetings short. I might not respond to shorts. Let me try for a minute. I agree. Corporate positions last only a few years while the productive working class lasts until retirement age. Well, ideally, they implement some new ideas going forward. Some of them are 2 steps back. They certainly like to discuss them. They sometimes bring in donuts and coffee, but seldom eat them. After the meeting, they leave the mess and tell us there's food in the conference room. I know that one. At a company I worked at, all the bigwigs would go out and barbecue steaks, and then they'd come into the break room and eat the steaks in front of all the lowly employees that didn't get one because they weren't personal friends or up in the hierarchy. Just a way of saying hey, let's get real. The advantage they have is in their conversation and negotiation. They say what needs to be said and climb the ladder. Kudos to them for being able to become successful and accumulate wealth for themselves. This would be an orange meme and amber meme position, and it's absolutely. Climb the ladder, make it there, appeal to the correct people, and you will find yourself in a lucrative and a position where if you follow the program correctly, you will be the agent who gets paid to enact the program. Is the program good? Is the program bad? None of my concern. I just make the money for my family, for everybody to be surviving. Amber meme, orange meme kind of perspective. Okay. All right. Cut it out. I'm being jittery here, and that's not my style. Oh, hi, Hallis Ag. Hey, brother. I guess to get started, what books would you recommend for a psych student? Integral Psychology is a pretty good one because you'll be familiar with the people that are referenced. Because sometimes integral psychology is kind of a dense book, but that's the one I would recommend to a psychology student. If you're more just looking for a quick glance at it, maybe brief history of everything or theory of everything. Those were sort of summary books of the Wilbur 3 system. Really, you can't go wrong. Just each Ken Wilber book kind of appeals to a different field, and he does write specifically for psychology, so that's an advantage for psychology people. They all have quite a bit to do with psychology, and I'm only talking about Ken Wilber books because that is, like, as far as I'm concerned, the source on this, and you can kind of move forward with like other stuff. But I kind of teach Ken Wilber here, so this would be like the entry point to understand, states of consciousness, stages of consciousness, lines of development, all these kind of topics that we bring up in the integral theory. Alrighty, going down to the classic 12 stages of consciousness under 10 minutes video. We're going to get a couple of these. At Lobo Pal says, Indigo needs to realize that those epiphanies are just personal mandalas that may or may not apply to others. Yeah, this is a great thing about the state structure model, the psychic, subtle, causal, non-dual model, is that here on the internet and in a lot of places, people will have those first preliminary, what we might call nature mysticism experiences, experiences of transcending the self, of temporary waking up, subtle visionary imagery, and they think that's the whole way. That's all the distance you can go with states. And that's not the case. There's all it goes real deep. But if that's all you know, it is so profound and world changing and life shattering to have those experiences and to understand that there is some reality to this spiritual awakening, meditative enlightenment scenario, to see that there's something to this. Um, these individuals will often then go around saying, my ego's dead, I'm awake, I'm enlightened. But this is just a step along the path, and it's a wonderful step. Waking up, then purification, and finally you may get into some of the really deep stuff that is mentioned in the classical literature. But it is not to be pejorative about any state, especially these more self-aware, psyche-aware, deeper states that people access, just to say that it's a long, hard road, and it's a long, hard road for a reason. For people to really get to that top stage, that stage 12, that's kind of a lifetime pursuit, and there's no way it's going to be easy from a first-tier perspective. At M.A. Brown, this is just Kabbalah without the Jewish words. Love you. Hey, I'll throw in some Jewish words if y'all want. I'm working on my French right now, but Yiddish is coming up next. But yeah, absolutely. I don't do or teach Kabbalah because of the Hebrew, because those words are kind of not native to me, and the tree of life is not as straightforward to me as like this 12 stage that looks kind of like a sciencey, social sciencey psychology model. But you're totally right. This is the same idea. We're all saying the same thing here in our esoteric mysticism. This is a big point in the integral theory is, yeah, all these cultures talking about spiritual awakening and enlightenment, they're kind of talking the same thing in different languages. Hope everyone can hear me. Jazz Griot says it's snowing here in Liverpool, England. Liverpool. All right. Great. It's snowing everywhere, it sounds like. It's snowing a lot of places. We've been dumping snow. I can't get around anywhere. I'm cold and miserable. I think it's nice and warm in here. Jazz Griot again on the leaving it all behind. That's my travel story. Travel is one of the best forms of education. Nice. Everyone should explore the country they live in and as many other countries as possible, just to meet as broad a range of people as possible and talk to them. Nothing like a taxing road trip to make you appreciate the simple comforts of life, and you always meet colorful characters along the way. Yes, that's a big part of the appeal, is to kind of try and stereotype and generalize, what are the people like here? How do the people look? How do they act? What are the stores like? What's the general attitude? And of course, the other side of the coin is, everywhere you go, people are still people. You go to the far edge of the world and they're all doing a lot of similar stuff. So I've heard kind of both of those, but yes, absolutely. Traveling to hostels and going and seeing all these other people traveling from all different parts of the world, you do kind of pick up interesting cultural differences, and you start to learn about some of those nuances and the different ways that different cultures go about it. Evan Casados, and I think you. Oh, thanks for thinking me. Very kind. We're kind of just thinking me into being here. At Charlie Thompson, 1641. Very informative, concise, and well presented. It merits hundreds of times the views it currently has. That's the Altitude's stage green. Well, I'll be honest with you. I feel like I deserve fewer views than I get, but I'll take it. I'm always down to get viewed. I'm totally astonished that people watch my channel as much as they do. I really appreciate it. This isn't a thing that I do for money. It's maybe could lead to a career at some point, but I am partnered and I don't monetize with ads because I don't want to inflict anything on well-meaning people who are curious about these topics that I teach. And I'm just more than anything excited to be meeting people who are interested in this as well, and to be having these conversations with them. So that appears to be all my not mentioned, which is like ridiculous and untrue. But I'll keep going here in the held for review section, which is probably going to give me some of the juicier stuff. Maybe the deep state is now monitoring my channel a little more closely. and so now everything's held for review. But let's get into the good stuff. So I'll just approve these as I go through. Let's see here. At Nathan, I think I have answered this actually. At Nathaniel Omaiv Boje 2824. Of course, I butchered that. I don't know what language it is. I really appreciate that the character representations of the levels had darker skin tones and well-articulated speech. It makes a world of difference to see esoteric knowledge presented in a way in which the characters used resemble the character I find myself incarnated into. Yes. I'm a 23-year-old African-American neuroscientist with a deep fascination for esoterica. Yeah, it's a dangerous topic to talk about in our culture. It's not even like on my radar. I just, drew some guys and girls and all kinds of creatures, and this is my favorite one to kind of depict the stages of consciousness. I have animated these characters and I just adore them. I hope I get to do more of that. But it's good that this is kind of impacting people in that way. The teal meme character kind of looks like a darker skinned Ken Wilber, and it's just a coincidence that I choose one race or one other race in the way I would draw a cartoon character. It's just like cool. And then we talk more. There's a little gushing. Animating must be tough, but just like everything in life, as you continue to learn and grow, so will your channel. I agree with that. For me personally, I find it very relatable and novel and hope that that sentiment is felt by others. Also, super on board with donning the name Nathaniel. Yeah. Kudos. Lots of Nathaniels in my line. We are of, yeah, at some point, we are of Israeli stock, where you see lots of Nathaniels and Moseses and Adams and those great classic names. I guess I'm not popular anymore. Nobody else commented, so that's my show for this week. um, but also I'm in a terrible mood, so that's probably a good thing. Let's see, what else could I talk about? I'm coming up with right now I have two big tutorial videos that I'm working on. One of them is about relationships and the other is about integral theory. When I started the Unthink Me channel, it was not just an integral theory channel, and much less just a stages channel. I knew that the first video that I wanted to make was going to be the stages of consciousness, which is altitudes, which also people know as spiral dynamics, but Ken Wilber currently has adapted that into altitudes, so I've gone along with that. Some people have stuck with spiral dynamics, and that's totally cool. They're just different. It's Coke and Pepsi as far as I'm concerned. I do personally like altitudes more because it is the Ken Wilber position right now. It includes that third tier of state structures of consciousness, which don't really particularly exist in reality, but it is, the religion of tomorrow for us to be embracing those in all four quadrants. But the stages was the idea that I was like, you know what? I need to make this video. So then I make a channel for it. And as I'm making the channel, it's like, it's not just stages. It's got to be integral theory because as I predicted, if I just show you these stages through one quadrant, from a quadrant to a quadrant, it's going to lead to a lot of confusion. And it has, particularly stage confusion, the difference between accessing an enlightened, let's say, state of consciousness one time, then returning to ego, to first tier, from as yourself, but after having accessed that state, you don't have it anymore. You're not in it anymore, and you can talk about it, you can think about it, but these states are not thoughts and they're not language. They're literally like how I experience reality right now. That's like a state, and to make that state into a trait takes a lot of hard work and a lot of nullifying and working against your natural impulses to run on autopilot in the first tier. So that's where it gets into the real hard work. You can get lucky and you can have, or super unlucky, and have a transcendent state of consciousness, and that does practically nothing for you in terms of advancing yourself towards being able to access that state regularly at will. So that's one of the big confusions. Obviously, the pre-trans fallacy is also very common, mistaking those early magical and mythic stage structures and the content of them for the state structures. For the Enlightenment stuff, this is often referred to as romanticism, thinking that we will find our enlightenment and our salvation and our social utopia in the past, in the Garden of Eden. So the Wilbur II system starts with up from Eden, the idea that we aren't going back to nature, back to babyhood, right? Any old babyhood. We're going upward to a new unexplored place that will carry us through everything that has ever been, which will include being any old baby and nature. So different, totally different way of seeing it, almost an opposite way of seeing it. That pre-trans fallacy is kind of one of the big ones, but at every stage there's a pre-trans fallacy. To see the subsequent stage, since it's not your stage, as being fundamentally similar to the previous stage. And there's a lot of confusion there, both within the stage you're at and within those stages as well. A common one is for orange meme, the rational achiever stage that many of us are at, maybe the biggest one, second biggest one in my culture, American culture, this world I live in over here. Those orange perspectives are going to see green meme, the sensitive multicultural self, as being the same thing as amber meme, which is mythic membership absolutism. And at the same time, those green and amber might mistake themselves for one another. So it's a big messy thing. And to have the stage model, you can actually begin to put together that, okay, historically, it went amber, orange, green. And in your individual experience, it went amber, orange, green. So green, although from orange, it looks like a falling down, it is actually to be able to take into account multiple forms of an orange meme perspective, or to have an orange meme perspective that's open-ended to things that don't fit that rational achiever mindset or that worldview, or what I call scientific fundamentalism, to think that science is the only means of obtaining any answer whatsoever. The problem with science, even though it's absolutely correct, it has to be by its own categorical definition, it doesn't know everything. It doesn't really know what consciousness is. It's getting towards understanding how the brain works, but it's not there yet. And most of what exists in the universe is invisible to us and mysterious, and we don't exactly understand what could possibly exist outside of our universe and what actually exists at the tiniest level and how all the laws work and what dimensions are. I mean, if we're to stick with strictly that which has already been proven, how would we possibly make any, new, truly new discoveries? And the bottom line is just consciousness. The fact before any science is done is that I'm here experiencing. And that's not really explained all that well by science. Like, for example, why am I this one? Why am I not everyone? Why am I not no one? Why do I this particular person in this particular time experiencing this particular moment? It's a strange thing, consciousness. And it's really not a scientific topic. It's a philosophical topic. It's the fact of the matter that we're here experiencing this. And it isn't the realm of science to kind of prove or disprove that I'm here. It simply is. So that would be like one example. Where orange meme needs to see beyond itself a little bit and to understand on a cultural societal level that orange meme developed out of amber meme and carries a little bit of the baggage of that, which we recognize with our green meme as imperialism, colonialism, and a lot of the sort of minor bigotry and exploitation that occurs in that orange meme world, and a lot of the false assumptions that are made. Read Atlas Shrugged. That's a perfect example of both the strengths and dignities and also the failings of orange meme. That it is kind of an ignoring of consciousness in the self, and to pretend that a human can exist as an ideal of rationality and achievement. We just aren't baked like that. Like, we don't have infinite power. We're kind of wussies, and there's a lot of ways to compensate for that, but they will wear you down, and you'll find yourself in a kind of cynical, hateful place with no energy, full of venom, and it's totally rational. So this is why I felt like it was a benevolent and noble thing to do tutorials on integral theory. I've read all of Wilbur's books. I'm not an expert or anything like that, but I had a long journey of trying to understand what is truly the underlying nature of reality. Who am I? What should I do? Being in an existential position for a long time, but trusting the intellectuals of history to help guide me. I read a lot of books. I did a lot of research, and I just kind of found this Ken Wilber thing like, wow, this really makes sense of all that other stuff that I read that made sense in its own terms. But then when you start stacking all this stuff and trying to compare things across from one another, everything contradicts everything else. And so with this model, as complicated and elaborate as it is, it helps you to sort out like why these disagreements exist and why you can believe two contradictory dialectical things at the same time, or you have to choose one and negate the other when they're all true. So Wilbur's kind of started with this kind of attitude or assumption that every person in the world is right from their own perspective. And so it's not to pick the best perspective and negate all others. It's to kind of try and understand how people come to these conclusions where they feel at least sufficiently correct about the way they perceive reality to go around acting it out in the world. These are stages of development. So that's why I started the channel, but it was never the intention to just do stages, nor was it the intention just to do integral theory. So I've started out in this direction, and I've found at this point that I need to do the tutorial on integral theory, like the full thing, like a quick one. I don't want to spend my life doing integral theory. This isn't who I am entirely. It's just kind of the skeleton of the way that I think. It's the buckets that I place things in. And it's not the content. Then we can go start putting content in buckets. So I need to do that integral theory tutorial, and it's written and I'm working on it. And then I also want to talk about relationships, because romantic relationships and also family relationships and friendships and things like that. A lot of the discussion on the podcast is focused on sort of business relationships and sort of casual relationships. But I want to get into the deep stuff, the trauma stuff. I have a lot to say about that. I've learned a lot about that, and how to recover from trauma, how to go through your life fearlessly, fearlessly, but more fearlessly, how to have an abundance mentality, how to organize your social interactions in a way that won't result in destroying or harming you, but also will allow you to love others openly and accept people who are in your life for who they are already without needing to change everyone. It's a very teal me mindset to, when you see these stages, to want to grow everyone else up. Don't look at them. Be their pal. Help them to be where they're at comfortably and safely and stably and healthily. Meanwhile, if you're ready, you go on to that next stage. You start exploring those states. So that's a big part of my motives here, and that's kind of a big part of what we're teaching is that descending, shadow work, looking at things that you're not already comfortable in, moving into new terrain. And it gets funny too. There's a lot of funny stuff in the relationship talk. So those are the two directions that I'm going in my tutorials. That's what I'm really excited to do and to bring into our podcast discussions. We are still doing Adam and James every Sunday. We generally release those on Thursdays. We've sorted out a lot of the issues that we've had with tech, and we're just having a great time with that. I also have a handful of other people that we are in the planning stages. We're just going to nail it out, and you'll start seeing other people popping up in those. I also have I'm going to go hunt ghosts. That's in February. So that's going to be an entirely different direction. And I know that some of my audience are believers and are very curious, at very least, about, after we pass, do we leave some sort of residue? Is there some sort of psychic environmental phenomena that might be explainable as paranormal, ghosts? Near-death experiences are certainly real. And this is what we've been calling spooky stuff. I was calling it spooky stuff, and it's been called spooky stuff in the Discord. It's kind of associated with that indigo stage. If we're to consider it, real, then it would kind of belong in that psychic realm. And I do see it as psychological in nature and not materially real, but that's my own particular perspective. And I'm not pushing that on anyone, but I hope to make a case for this. Also, not to invalidate it at all or say it's just people being crazy. I think it's very important to understand truly what the nature of this is. Yeah, shadow work. Yep. And we got to dive. We got to really get into that, because that's another thing that I feel a lot of suffering is going on. I can see suffering in this community, in us, because those of us who are beginning to encounter ego awareness or psyche awareness, this is a painful process. This is to truly see yourself naked, to truly hear your voice back, the recording of yourself, but in the present moment. It's embarrassing, it's humiliating, it's physically and mentally painful. It will break some things in your life. All of these motions, all these movements up the spiral, and as that happens, you really have to have a solid base. You really have to have those lower stages worked out, and you have to be really comfortable in dealing at those lower levels. So this is kind of what I'm calling shadow work. There's a lot of approaches to it outside of integral and inside of integral. This is traditional therapy, and this is non-traditional therapy, and this is generally personal development, self-help. This is that range of topics, and we're going to bring integral into it, and hopefully some of us will become more satisfied in our families and in our romantic relationships and in our personal lives, and will feel more secure and more equanimous and more capable of compassion and love for others, even if they are antagonistic on a stage that we're at, or in an occupational pursuit that we are running up against them in. I've often been seen as a judgmental person, and I agree with that. I think judging is important, but not on an emotional level. I think that you should really accept people for who they are and try to care deeply about them for all their flaws, even as you're defending yourself and defending your position and defending your emotional reality and your right to exist. Compassion is all about not just having compassion for those that you agree with and those that you accept, but learning to accept more people and learning to find where more people are right and where their perspective is informed by their own history and their own experience. Like we said earlier, nobody's totally wrong about everything. These we're all just, fingers of the glove of God, a singular perspective of the universe seeing itself, and it's through a mirror darkly. There's a lot of scratches on the lens in many cases, and particularly spiritualist folks walk with a limp, maybe stagger a little bit because they got through those through that spiral maybe too quickly. Maybe they were on the run up that spiral. Maybe they had a real vendetta getting up there. And now it's time to work that out as we become ego aware, and we have to integrate that understanding and not necessarily get more squishy, but allow ourselves venues where we can truly be ourselves and allow ourselves patience when we can't be that way. And so, I'm also popping up on TikTok. I don't I'm not a TikTok person by any stretch of the imagination. I'm very long form, and there's very little that I do that's interesting in, like, a minute. But I know that there's so many people there, and it's an opportunity, so I have the Unthink Me channel there, and I'm clipping stuff and putting it on there and learning how to do that. So that's appearing in reality, and hopefully it'll funnel more of us into these longer form videos that you can hang out and just kind of hear one or many people's voices just talking about these kind of integral and spiritual concepts. And hopefully some of that will help the audience to attain some clarity in whatever their own particular interest and angle is. I I do look forward to hunting for ghosts, and I do hope that I experience something that resembles a ghost to me, because that's good radio. Uh, hey, thanks for showing up, and I'm just playing around here with stuff. I'm just trying to figure out if I have clipping and popping in my audio. That would be a prime accomplishment if I don't, because the internet here is slow, and I finally figured out how to talk to my Linux audio drivers. So it's just a matter of time until all that nonsense is sorted out. Namaste, friends. Kind of a simple Simon over here today. And I was like weirdly nervous this whole time. I've been alone all day today, and I'm alone in this big, warm, well lit building. So I'm not. I'll be straight with you. Like I'm not usually nervous when I do things like this. So it's funny to me that I'm nervous right now. It's like there's two people here. um, but maybe I just need to grab a bite to eat. So, anyways, namaste. Have a wonderful rest of your evening or morning if you're in another part of the world, and I'll see you soon for more comment answering action. Thank you for being here with me.